Hey, it's great to have you back. So, we've talked a little bit about the data analysis process. As a quick refresher, the data analysis process phases are ask, prepare, process, analyze, share, and act. You might remember me saying earlier that this entire program is modeled after these steps. So, now we're going to really dig in and explore how each of these phases work together. But I'm getting a little ahead of myself. First, let's spend a little time understanding the data lifecycle. No, data isn't actually alive, but it does have a life cycle. So how do data analysts bring data to life? Well, it starts with the right data analysis tool. These include spreadsheets, databases, query languages, and visualization software. Don't worry if you don't know how these work, or even what they are. At one point, every data analyst has been right where you are right now, and they probably had a lot of the same questions. I remember when I first started learning about spreadsheets. I was a young intern, and the company I was working for was in the middle of a big systems change. That meant we had to move tons of reports from the old system to the new one. After a few weeks, I noticed that even the people who are further in their careers were not as technically minded as I was. So that became a great opportunity for me to add value. My aha spreadsheet moment came when I started researching shortcuts that I could use to work with the spreadsheets more efficiently. This would really streamline the process of getting those reports moved over to the new system. Once everything started flowing, I remember getting emails from other finance analysts at the company. They were so grateful that someone had come in and fixed a problem that no one else could. That inspired me to go even further and learn how to use spreadsheets in all sorts of incredible ways. As you continue through this course, I bet you'll be just as impressed as I was. And before you know it, you'll bring data to life too. Let's get started. Here's a question for you. When you think about a life cycle, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Now, I'm not a mind reader, but I know whatever you're thinking is right. There's actually no wrong answer because everything has a life cycle. One of the most well-known examples of a life cycle is a butterfly. Butterflies begin as eggs, hatch into caterpillars, and then become a chrysalis. That's where the real magic happens. Data has a life cycle of its own too. In this video, we're going to talk about each of the stages in that life cycle to help you understand the individual phases data goes through. The life cycle of data is plan, capture, manage, analyze, archive, and destroy. Let's start with the first phase, planning. This actually happens well before starting an analysis project. During planning, a business decides what kind of data it needs, how it will be managed throughout its life cycle, who will be responsible for it, and the optimal outcomes. For example, let's say an electricity provider wanted to gain insights into how to save people energy. In the planning phase, they might decide to capture information on how much electricity its customers use each year, what types of buildings are being powered, and what types of devices are being powered inside of them. The electricity company would also decide which team members would be responsible for collecting, storing, and sharing that data. All of this happens during planning, and it helps set up the rest of the project. The next phase is when you capture data. This is where data is collected from a variety of different sources and brought into the organization. With so much data being created every day, the ways to collect it are truly endless. One common method is getting data from outside resources. For example, if you're doing data analysis on weather patterns, you'd probably get data from a publicly available data set like the National Climatic Data Center. Another way to get data is from a company's own documents and files, which are usually stored inside a database. While we've mentioned databases before, we haven't gone into too much detail about what they are. A database is a collection of data stored in a computer system. In the case of our electricity provider, the business would probably measure data usage among its customers within a database that it owns. As a quick note, when you maintain a database of customer information, ensuring data integrity, credibility, and privacy are all important concerns. You'll learn a lot more about that later on. Now that we've captured our data, we move on to the next phase of the data lifecycle, manage. Here we're talking about how we care for our data, how and where it's stored, the tools used to keep it safe and secure, and the actions taken to make sure that it's maintained properly. This phase is very important to data cleansing, which we'll cover later on. Next, it's time to analyze your data. This is where data analysts really shine. In this phase, the data is used to solve problems, make great decisions, and support business goals. For example, one of our electricity company's goals might be to find ways to help customers save energy. Moving on, the data lifecycle now evolves to the archive phase. Archiving means storing data in a place where it's still available but may not be used again. During analysis, analysts handle huge amounts of data. Can you imagine if we had to sort through all of the available data that's out there, even if it was no longer useful and relevant to our work? It makes way more sense to archive it than to keep it around. And finally, the last step of the data lifecycle, the destroy phase. Yes, it sounds sad, but when you destroy data, it won't hurt a bit. So let's get back to our electricity provider example. They would have data stored on multiple hard drives. To destroy it, the company would use a secure data erasure software. If there were any paper files, they would be shredded too. This is important for protecting a company's private information, as well as private data about its customers. And there you have it, the data life cycle. And now that you understand the different phases data goes through during its life cycle, you can better understand how to approach the data analysis process, which we'll talk about soon. Now that you understand all the phases of the data lifecycle, it's time to move on to the phases of data analysis. They sound similar, but are two different things. Data analysis isn't a life cycle. It's the process of analyzing data. Coming up, we'll look at each step of the data analysis process and how it will relate to your work as a data analyst. Even this program is designed to follow these steps. Understanding these connections will help guide your own analysis and your work in this program. You've already learned that this program is modeled after the stages of the data analysis process. This program is split into courses, 6 of which are based upon the steps of data analysis: ask, prepare, process, analyze, share, and act. Okay, let's start with the first step in data analysis, the ask phase. In this phase, we do 2 things. We define the problem to be solved, and we make sure that we fully understand stakeholder expectations. Stakeholders hold a stake in the project. They are people who have invested time and resources into a project and are interested in the outcome. Let's break that down. First, defining a problem means you look at the current state and identify how it's different from the ideal state. Usually, there's an obstacle we need to get rid of or something wrong that needs to be fixed. For instance, a sports arena might want to reduce the time fans spend waiting in the ticket line. The obstacle is figuring out how to get the customers to their seats more quickly. Another important part of the ask phase is understanding stakeholder expectations. The first step here is to determine who the stakeholders are. That may include your manager, an executive sponsor, or your sales partners. There can be lots of stakeholders, but what they all have in common is that they help make decisions, influence actions and strategies, and have specific goals they want to meet. They also care about the project, and that's why it's so important to understand their expectations. For instance, if your manager assigns you a data analysis project related to business risk, it will be smart to confirm whether they want to include all types of risks that could affect the company, or just risks related to weather, such as hurricanes and tornadoes. Communicating with your stakeholders is key in making sure you stay engaged and on track throughout the project. So as a data analyst, developing strong communication strategies is very important. This part of the ask phase helps you keep focused on the problem itself, not just its symptoms. As you learned earlier, the 5 whys are extremely helpful here. In an upcoming course, you'll learn how to ask effective questions and define the problem by working with stakeholders. You'll also cover strategies that can help you share what you discover in a way that keeps people interested. After that, we'll move on to the prepare step of the data analysis process. This is where data analysts collect and store data they'll use for the upcoming analysis process. You'll learn more about the different types of data and how to identify which kinds of data are most useful for solving a particular problem. You'll also discover why it's so important that your data and results are objective and unbiased. In other words, any decisions made from your analysis should always be based on facts and be fair and impartial. Next is the process step. Here, data analysts find and eliminate any errors and inaccuracies that can get in the way of results. This usually means cleaning data, transforming it into more useful format, combining two or more data sets to make information more complete, and removing outliers, which are any data points that could skew the information. After that, you'll learn how to check the data you prepared to make sure it's complete and correct. This phase is all about getting the details right, so you'll also fix typos, inconsistencies, or missing and inaccurate data. And to top it off, you'll gain strategies for verifying and sharing your data cleansing with stakeholders. Then it's time to analyze. Analyzing the data you've collected involves using tools to transform and organize that information so that you can draw useful conclusions, make predictions, and drive informed decision making. There are lots of powerful tools data analysts use in their work, and in this course you'll learn about two of them: spreadsheets and structured query language, or SQL, which is often pronounced SQL. The next course is based on the share phase. Here, you'll learn how data analysts interpret results and share them with others to help stakeholders make effective, data-driven decisions. In the share phase, visualization is a data analyst's best friend. So this course will highlight why visualization is essential to getting others to understand what your data is telling you. With the right visuals, facts and figures become so much easier to see, and complex concepts become easier to understand. We'll explore different kinds of visuals and some great data visualization tools. You'll also practice your own presentation skills by creating compelling slideshows and learning how to be fully prepared to answer questions. Then we'll take a break from the data analysis process to show you all of the really cool things you can do with the programming language R. You don't need to be familiar with R or programming languages in general. Just know that R is a popular tool for data manipulation, calculation, and visualization. And for our final data analysis phase, we have ACT. This is the exciting moment when the business takes all of the insights you, the data analyst, have provided and puts them to work in order to solve the original business problem. And will be acting on what you've learned throughout this program. This is when you'll prepare for your job search and have the chance to complete a case study project. It's a great opportunity for you to bring together everything you've worked on throughout this course. Plus, adding a case study to your portfolio helps you stand out from the other candidates when you interview for your first data analyst job. Now you know the different steps of the data analysis process and how our course reflects it. You have everything you need to understand how this course works. And my fellow Googlers and I will be here to guide you every step of the way.
Regardless of what type of data analysis you're conducting, the process is generally the same. The example that I'll walk through is that of our employee engagement survey, but you can imagine that this process applies to just about any data analysis that you're going to conduct as an analyst. The first thing you want to do is ask. You want to ask all of the right questions at the beginning of the engagement so that you better understand what your leaders and stakeholders need from this analysis. So the types of questions that I generally ask are around, what is the problem that we're trying to solve? What is the purpose of this analysis? What are we hoping to learn from it? So after you've asked all the right questions and you've wrapped your arms around the scope of the analysis you need to conduct, the next step is to prepare. We need to be thinking about what type of data we need to answer those key questions. This could be anything from quantitative data or qualitative data. It could be cross-sectional or point in time versus longitudinal over a long period of time. We need to be thinking about the type of data we need in order to answer the questions that we've set out to answer based on what we learned when we asked the right questions. We also need to be thinking about how we're going to collect that data, or if we need to collect that data, It may be the case that we need to collect this data brand new. And so we need to think about what type of data we're going to be collecting and how. For our employee engagement survey, we do that via a survey of both quantitative and qualitative questions. But it may actually be the case that for many analyses, the data that you're looking for already exists. Then it's a question of working with those data owners to make sure that you're able to leverage that data and use it responsibly. After you've done all the hard work to collect your data, now you need to process that data. It begins with cleaning. This to me is the most fun part of the data analytics process. We can think of it as the initial introduction or the handshake, hello to your data. This is where you get a chance to understand its structure, its quirks, its nuances, and you really get a chance to understand deeply what type of data you're going to be working with and understanding what potential that data has to answer all of your questions. This is such an important part too, where we're running through all of our quality assurance checks. For example, do we have all of the data that we anticipated we would have? Are we missing data at random, or is it missing in a systematic way such that maybe something went wrong with our data collection effort? If needed, did we code all of our data the right way? Are there any outliers that we need to treat differently? This is the part where you spend a lot of time really digging deeply into the structure and nuance of the data to make sure that you're able to analyze it appropriately and responsibly. After cleaning our data and running all of our quality assurance checks, now is the point where we analyze our data, making sure to do so in as objective and unbiased a way as possible. To do this, the first thing we do is run through a series of analyses that we've already planned ahead of time based on the questions that we know we want to answer from the very, very beginning of the process. One thing that's probably the hardest about this particular process, the hardest thing about analyzing data, is that we as analysts are trained to look for patterns. And over time, as we become better and better at our jobs, what we'll often find is that we can start to intuit what we might see in the data. We might have a sneaking suspicion as to what the data are going to tell us. And this is the point where we have to take a step back and let the data speak for itself. As data analysts, we are storytellers, but we also have to keep in mind that it is not our story to tell. That story belongs to the data, and it is our job as analysts to amplify and tell that story in as unbiased and objective a way as possible. The next step is to share all of the data and insights that you've generated from your analyses. Now, typically for our employee engagement survey, we start by sharing the high-level findings with our executive team. We want them to have a landscape view of how the organization is feeling, and we want to make sure that there aren't any surprises as they dig deeper and deeper into the data to understand how teams are feeling and how individual employees are feeling. All of this work, from asking the right questions to collecting your data to analyzing and sharing, doesn't mean much of anything if we aren't taking action on what we've just learned. This to me is the most critical part, especially of our employee engagement survey. I like to say that the survey is actually the easy part, and acting on the results is really where the real work begins. This is where we use all of those data-driven insights to decide what types of interventions we want to introduce, not only at the organizational level, but also at the team level as well. So we might find, for example, that the organization is working on a series of interventions to help improve part of the employee experience, whereas individual teams have additional roles and responsibilities to play to either bolster some of those efforts or to introduce new ones to sort of better meet their team where their strengths and opportunity areas are. The data analysis process is rigorous, but it is lengthy, and I can completely appreciate that we as data analysts get so excited about just diving right into the data and doing what we do best. The challenge is that if we don't work through the process in its entirety, if we try to skip steps, we're not going to be able to elicit the insights that we're looking for. I absolutely love my job. I have such a deep appreciation for data and what it can do and what type of insight we can derive from it.
I'm looking forward to introducing you to some of the tools data analysts use each and every day. There are tons of options out there, but the most common ones you'll see analysts use are spreadsheets, query languages, and visualization tools. And this video is going to give you a quick look at how these tools are being used by data analysts every day. Believe it or not, I was several years into my accounting and finance career before I saw all of these tools working together. At that point, I was very experienced with spreadsheets and had worked in large data sets with some of the traditional database programs. I had the foundational skill set to use query languages, and I had dabbled in visualizations, but I had never brought them all together. Then I got hired here at Google, and it was so eye-opening to come into a place like this with an abundance of information everywhere you look. As an analyst at Google, the true power of these tools became so much clearer to me. I became more focused on really maximizing everything these tools could do, streamlining my reporting, and just making my work simpler. All of a sudden, I had a lot more time and space to dedicate to identifying new problems to solve and driving decision-making. Without a doubt, once you've learned the power of these tools, you will be well on your way to becoming the best data analyst you can possibly be. All right, I hope that story has you even more motivated for this course. Let's get started with spreadsheets. Again, there are lots of different spreadsheet solutions, but two popular options are Microsoft Excel and Google Sheets. To put it simply, a spreadsheet is a digital worksheet. It stores, organizes, and sorts data. This is important because the usefulness of your data depends on how well it's structured. When you put your data into a spreadsheet, you can see patterns, group informations, and easily find the information you need. Spreadsheets also have some really useful features called formulas and functions. A formula is a set of instructions that performs a specific calculation using the data in a spreadsheet. Formulas can do basic things like add, subtract, multiply, and divide. But they don't stop there. You can also use formulas to find the average of a number set, look up a particular value, return the sum of a set of values that meets a particular rule, and so much more. A function is a preset command that automatically performs a specific process or task using the data in the spreadsheet. That sounds pretty technical, I know. So let's break it down. Just think of a function as a simpler, more efficient way of doing something that would normally take a lot of time. In other words, functions can help make you more efficient. Those are the spreadsheet basics for now. Later on, you'll see them in action and start working with spreadsheets yourself. The next data analysis tool is called query language. A query language is a computer programming language that allows you to retrieve and manipulate data from a database. You'll learn something called structured query language, more commonly known as SQL. SQL is a language that lets data analysts communicate with a database. A database is a collection of data stored in a computer system. SQL is the most widely used structured query language for a couple of reasons. It's easy to understand and works very well with all kinds of databases. With SQL, data analysts can access the data they need by making a query. Although query means question, I like to think of it as more of a request. So, you're requesting that the database do something for you. You can ask it to do a lot of different things, such as insert, delete, select, or update data. Okay, that's a top-level look at SQL. In a later video, we'll explore it further and use SQL to do some really cool things with data. Lastly, let's talk about data visualization. You've learned that data visualization is the graphical representation of information. Some examples include graphs, maps, and tables. Most people process visuals more easily than words alone. That's why visualizations are so important. They help data analysts communicate their insights to others in an effective and compelling way. When you think about the data analysis process, after data is prepared, processed, and analyzed, the insights are visualized so it can be understood and shared. This makes it easier for stakeholders to draw conclusions, make decisions, and come up with strategies. Some popular visualization tools are Tableau and Looker. Data analysts like using Tableau because it helps them create visuals that are very easy to understand. This means that even non-technical users can get the information they need. Looker is also popular with data analysts because it gives them an easy way to create visuals based on the results of a query. With Looker, you can give stakeholders a complete picture of your work by showing them visualization data and the actual data related to it. All visualization tools have great features that are useful in different situations. Soon, you'll learn how to decide which tool to use for a particular job. And that's everything you need to know about the data lifecycle and the data analysis process. You'll get a chance to test out what you know so you can feel confident moving forward in this course. Feel free to take some time to refamiliarize yourself with the concepts. And when you're ready, give it your best shot. If you're ever unsure of an answer, you can always go back and review the videos and readings. Then you'll be ready to move on to the next set of videos where we'll continue exploring the data analytics tools you've already covered, and you'll get some really fascinating insights into exactly how they work. Before long, you'll have the knowledge and confidence to start using them yourself. Stay tuned.
Thank you for watching our video. We hope you found it helpful. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button below and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. If you know someone who could benefit from this information, please share it with them. We would love to hear your thoughts on this learning course, so please leave a comment below. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.